At 3:15 in the morning, while port scans from an Eastern European server farm were lighting up my dashboards like a Christmas tree, I did something I had not done in 23 years of night shift work. I took off my headset, laid it on my desk, and walked out the door. My name is Gerald Vance. I am 54. For more than 2 decades, I spent my nights in Austin watching servers breathe, keeping hackers from draining bank accounts while the rest of Texas slept. I did not leave with a dramatic speech or by slamming my laptop shut. I left the way a man leaves a bad contract, slow, deliberate, and with a quiet certainty that the storm about to hit the company was no longer my problem to solve. My job at Vanguard Cyber Solutions was simple on paper, but brutal in practice. We are a midsize cybersecurity firm that manages network monitoring for several regional banks. If a bank server goes dark or client data gets leaked at 2 a.m., my phone is the one that rings. The night shift is a thankless world. If everything runs smoothly, management forgets you exist. If a single alert gets missed, you are the first one under the microscope. We had 5 people on the night rotation, but most of them were kids straight out of college, or people who knew how to click buttons but could not write a line of code if their lives depended on it. Then there was Sean Brady. Sean is 29, the lead for the day shift crew, and he is the kind of guy who spends more time polishing his LinkedIn profile than analyzing threat logs. Sean is always smiling, always telling Victoria Caldwell, our director of engineering, how we are a family and how he has everything under control. But last Christmas Eve, while Sean was posting pictures of his holiday party on Facebook, I was the one who spent 6 hours neutralizing an advanced persistent threat that had bypassed our firewall. Sean got the corporate shout-out the next morning because he sent the summary email. I got a brief Slack message saying, "Good job, Gerald." I did not mind it much back then. At my age, you learn to let go of your ego as long as the paycheck clears and the health insurance covers your family. But things changed on a Thursday morning when Victoria called an all-hands meeting to announce a new retention program. The company was apparently worried about key talent leaving for competitors, so they created a special fund to reward critical personnel. Victoria gave this long, rehearsed speech about how much Vanguard values commitment. She kept using phrases like critical contributors and key pillars of our operations. After the main meeting, she started calling people individually to deliver their numbers. It was a classic management tactic to keep us from comparing notes, but it did not work. Scene was the first one to get his numbers. He came back into our group chat trying to sound humble, but he could not help himself. He sent me a private screenshot of his agreement, a $32,000 cash retention bonus. The agreement required him to stay for 12 months, and if he left early, he had to pay it back. He added a message saying, "Told you, Gerald. They know who keeps this ship afloat." My stomach dropped. I did not feel jealous of a 29-year-old kid. I felt a cold realization because I knew exactly what my value was in their eyes. When Victoria called me 20 minutes later, she had her webcam on and was wearing a bright professional smile. She thanked me for being a stabilizing force on the night shift for so many years. She said I was the backbone of our late-night security. Then she gave me the number. "We are offering you a retention bonus of $4,500, she said, her voice full of false excitement. It came with the exact same 12-month commitment. I stared at her through the camera. For a second, I thought I had misheard. I waited for her to correct herself, to say she meant $45,000 or at least $15. Zero. But she just kept smiling, waiting for me to thank her. "Is there a mistake in the calculations, Victoria?" I asked. Her smile faltered slightly. "No, Gerald. This is what the budget allowed for the night shift here. It is not a reflection of your work. We value you immensely." I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. I just said, "I see," and ended the call. I sat in my office with the lights off, the blue light of my monitors reflecting off the walls. I opened my personal spreadsheet. My daughter Chloe was starting her sophomore year as a pre-med student at UT. Her tuition for the upcoming semester was $15,000, and I had been counting on this retention bonus to cover it without dipping into my retirement savings. Seeing the numbers side by side on my screen, $32,000 for Sean and $4,500 for me, made it clear. The company did not value stability. They valued visibility. Sean was there during the day to shake hands with the executives. I was just the ghost who fixed their problems in the dark, but they had forgotten one crucial detail. Over the last 5 years, to make my 12-hour night shifts manageable, I had written a custom script called VanceGuard. The company's official incident response protocols were 10 years out of date. Whenever a server was attacked, the official manual required us to manually analyze log files and write blocking rules line by line, a process that took hours. VanceGuard changed all that. It was an automated detection and response script that analyzed traffic patterns in real time and blocked hostile IPs within seconds. It was the only reason our small night shift team could handle massive coordinated attacks. I had written every line of VanceGuard on my personal laptop at home, using my own resources. I had never registered it as company IP, and Vanguard had never asked me to sign an intellectual property assignment agreement for it. I just ran it from my local machine during my shifts. It was my tool, my property. On Friday morning, I downloaded the retention agreement Victoria had sent me. I read the fine print. It was a standard 12-month lock-in with a strict non-disclosure clause regarding the bonus amounts. If I signed it, I was agreeing to stay for a full year under the same workload, with no option to renegotiate. For $4,500, I did not sign it. Instead, I spent the weekend reviewing my options. I called a lawyer friend of mine and asked him about my rights regarding software I developed on my own time. He told me that under federal law, specifically 17 U.S.C., Section 106, I held the exclusive copyright to VanceGuard. Since there was no signed assignment agreement, Vanguard had no legal right to use my software without my permission. If they did, it was copyright infringement, which came with statutory damages up to $150,000 per violation. By Monday night, I had my plan ready. I logged into my shift at 7 p.m. The night started quiet, but by 11 p.m. the alerts started coming in. It was a coordinated scan targeting our primary financial client's database. Sean texted me from his couch. "Gerald, you seeing this? Looks like Romania is probing the port." I looked at the screen. I looked at the unsigned retention agreement on my desktop, and then I looked at the code for VanceGuard running on my system. The game was about to change. The scans coming from the Romanian IP addresses were not standard brute force attempts. They were slow, deliberate, and highly targeted. Usually, my VanceGuard script would have identified the signature immediately, generated a temporary block on their subnet, and sent a silent alert to my dashboard. The whole process would have taken less than 15 seconds, and I would have gone back to sipping my coffee. But tonight, I kept the script disabled. I wanted to see exactly how our official response protocol held up under real pressure. And more importantly, I wanted to document the gap. Instead of automation, I opened the official Vanguard Incident Response Playbook. It was a 45-page PDF compiled by a consulting firm 8 years ago. Following the manual, I had to copy the source IP address, run a manual WHOISIS lookup, trace the hosting provider, write a custom firewall rule, and submit a ticket for approval to the change management queue. By the time I submitted the first ticket at 11:30 p.m., the attackers had already rotated to a new set of IPs in Bulgaria and resumed their scan. My screen was filling up with critical alerts. The database server for our largest client, Lone Star Federal Union, was starting to lag under the traffic load. Scenes messages in our private Slack channel were getting more frequent. "Gerald, the client dashboard is showing response times over 5 seconds. Are you blocking these IPs?" I typed back, "I am following the official playbook, Sean. I have submitted 3 firewall change requests." Scene replied, "Why aren't you using your automated tools? Usually this is cleared up by now." "Because those tools are my personal property, Sean," I wrote. "I am reviewing the retention agreement right now, and until it is finalized, I am sticking strictly to the company's approved manual procedures." He did not reply to that. He probably did not understand the implications, or maybe he was too busy looking at his $32,000 bonus agreement to care. By 12:45 a.m., the attack vector shifted. The hackers realized their port scans were being monitored, so they stopped targeting the databases directly. Instead, they launched a SQL injection campaign against the administrative login portal. This was the master gateway. If they got through, they would not just have access to Lone Star Federal Union. They would have administrative access to all 14 banks we monitored. I sat there, watching the login logs roll by. The official playbook had no specific protocol for a distributed SQL injection on the admin portal, other than to escalate to the engineer on call. At 1:15 a.m., I had a decision to make. I could run VanceGuard. It would take me 2 minutes to deploy a patch to the admin firewall and block the SQL queries, or I could follow the rules, cover my own ass, and escalate. I chose to escalate. I called the day shift lead first. Sean answered on the fourth ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Gerald, what is going on?" "We have a distributed SQL injection targeting the master admin portal," I said. "The official playbook says I need your authorization as team lead to block administrative traffic." Scene groaned. "Can't you just handle it?" "You know how to do this." "I need your formal approval in the ticket, Sean. And since you are the day lead, you need to log in and review the traffic log. I cannot make the call to shut down admin access without a manager's sign-off." I could hear him rustling in bed, then the sound of his laptop opening. It took him 15 minutes just to log into the virtual private network. By the time he was online, the attackers had already tried 4,000 different admin credentials. "Gerald, I do not see the logs you are talking about," Sean said, his voice rising in panic. "Where is the threat signature?" I walked him through it, steps by step, like I was training an intern. He had the title, he had the $32,000 bonus, but when the system started screaming, he did not even know which dashboard to open. "This looks bad," he said after 10 minutes of staring at the screen. "We need to call Victoria." I looked at the clock. It was 2:15 a.m. Victoria Caldwell did not like being woken up. Last month, a junior engineer had called her at 3 a.m. for a minor issue, and she had spent the next weekly meeting lecturing us about critical thinking and problem solving. "You are the team lead, Sean," I said. "You make the call." There was a long pause. I could hear Sean breathing heavily. He was realizing that if he called her, it would show he did not have control. But if he did not call her and the portal got breached, his career was over. "You call her, Gerald," Sean said. "You have more tenure. She trusts your technical assessment." "No," I said. "I am just a night shift analyst. According to my retention offer, my role is to maintain stability, not manage incidents." "That is your department." "Fine, I will call her." Sean snapped. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Victoria. Her voice was sharp and irritated. "Gerald, Sean says we have a critical incident." "What is the status?" I gave her the facts. No emotion, no exaggeration. "The admin portal is under a coordinated SQL injection attack. We are seeing 50 attempts per second. If they bypass the secondary defense layer, they will have administrative control of all client databases." "Can we block the subnet?" she asked. "We can," I said, "but the attackers are rotating networks. We need a dynamic block, or we need to take the admin portal offline. Taking it offline will violate our SLAs with 3 major clients," she said. "What about that script you developed? The one that handles dynamic blocking?" I took a deep breath. "The VanceGuard script is hosted on my personal system, Victoria. Since I have not signed the retention agreement, I have disabled my personal tools. I am currently running the official manual protocol. Are you holding the system hostage for a bonus, Gerald?" she asked, her voice cold. "No," I said. "I am protecting my intellectual property. The contract you sent me states that all work performed during the next 12 months, including any software used to perform my duties, becomes the exclusive property of Vanguard. Since VanceGuard was developed on my own time and is not company property, I cannot allow it to be integrated under these terms." She was silent for several seconds. I could hear the gears turning in her head. She knew she had messed up. She had assumed I would just sign the paper and keep working. "Just do whatever you have to do to fix it, Gerald," she said finally. "We will discuss the contract details tomorrow morning. Just fix it." I looked at the screen. The secondary defense layer was starting to fail. The attackers had found a loophole in the legacy firewall rules that Vanguard had refused to update. "I can block this attack, Victoria," I said. "But I cannot do it with Vanguard's tools, and I will not use mine without a signed license agreement. Gerald, this is an order." "Fix it," she said, her voice rising. It was 3:10 a.m. I looked at the clock, then at the unsigned contract. I looked at the Slack chat, where Sean was typing frantic questions. "I am sorry, Victoria," I said, "but my shift ends when I say it does." I hung up the phone. I logged into my personal machine, opened the terminal, and deleted the VanceGuard execution files from the local server directory. I revoked the network access tokens I had created for my script. The automation was gone. At 3:15 a.m., I stood up, took off my headset, and walked away from my desk. The dashboards were flashing red, but for the first time in 23 years, the screens were just glass and light. They did not belong to me anymore. I slept better that night than I had in years. There were no alarms, no blue screen glare, and no phone buzzing under my pillow. I woke up at 8 a.m., made coffee for my daughter Chloe, and read the morning paper. For 23 years, my life had been dictated by servers in another part of town. Now my time was my own. But back at Vanguard Cyber Solutions, the morning was anything but peaceful. When I checked my personal phone around 9 a.m., I had 14 missed calls from Victoria Caldwell, 6 from Sean Brady, and a dozen Slack notifications. I did not log into the work system, but I did check the public status pages of our client banks. 3 of them were displaying service disruption banners. The red light was on. I later found out from one of the junior engineers on the night rotation that after I walked out, it took them nearly 3 to contain the attack. Sean had spent most of that time searching through old directories on the servers, looking for where my Vanguard script was located. He did not know that I had deleted the executable files and revoked the credentials. Without my script, they had to manually write and apply firewall rules for hundreds of rotating IP addresses, a process they had not practiced in years. By the time they managed to secure the admin portal, the hackers had not breached the main databases, but they had caused severe performance degradation across all systems. For a financial institution, 3 hours of lag is a lifetime. It meant thousands of failed transactions, delayed processing, and automated reports flagged to the regulators. The service-level agreement violations were piling up, with fines starting at $10,000 per hour for each client. At 10:30 a.m., my phone rang again. This time it was Gordon Fletcher, the Vice President of Operations. I had spoken to Gordon exactly 3 times in my 23 years at the company. Every single one of those calls had occurred during a major data center outage when he was looking for someone to blame. "Gerald," Gordon said, skipping any greeting, "we have a situation. We are seeing cascading performance issues on the bank portals, and Victoria says you have the configuration details for our incident response system." "I have the context, Gordon," I said calmly, "but I do not have the authorization." "We need you to jump on a bridge call right now," he said. "The executives from Lone Star Federal Union are on the line, and we need to explain why our response time was so slow." "I cannot do that," I said. Gordon sighed, his voice tight with irritation. "Gerald, this is not the time to complain about your schedule. This is a critical security incident." "It is exactly the time, Gordon," I said. "You offered me a $4,500 retention bonus with a 12-month lock-in. You offered Sean Brady $32,000 for the same period because you believed he was the one who kept this operation secure. If Sean is the critical resource, he should be the one explaining the system configurations to the clients. That is what you paid him for." "Gerald, we can discuss the compensation structure later," Gordon said, trying to soften his tone. "Right now, we need to protect our clients." "You made your decision about my value, Gordon. This is what a $4,500 employee looks like. I am not available for emergency calls." I hung up before he could respond. By Wednesday morning, the situation had deteriorated. Vanguard's public-facing status page went from yellow to orange. They had posted an update citing internal resource constraints, which is corporate code. "For we do not have enough qualified people to handle the work." For a cybersecurity firm, admitting resource constraints during an incident is like a bank admitting they lost the keys to the vault. At 1 p.m., Sean Brady called me directly. He did not send a text or a Slack message. His voice was shaking. "Gerald, please," he said, his usual arrogant tone completely gone. "I am in over my head here. Victoria is threatening to fire me if I do not get the Lone Star portal back to normal. And the logs are showing new scanning activity. I do not know how to configure the dynamic blocks without your script." I listened to him breathe. I felt no satisfaction in his panic, just a quiet confirmation of what I had known all along. "You signed the retention agreement, Sean," I said. "You took the $32,000. That money is not just for the quiet days when you can post on LinkedIn. It is for the moments when the systems are failing and the pressure is on. This is your job." But I do not know how it works, Gerald, he pleaded. You wrote all the documentation, but some of it is outdated. I do not understand the secondary routing protocols. I told Victoria 3 years ago that the documentation needed to be updated, I said. She told me to focus on execution instead of process improvement. So I did. Good luck, Sean. I ended the call and blocked his number. The irony was that nothing on the servers was actually broken. The infrastructure was intact. But without VanSguard, the systems were completely undefended. It was like a secure vault where the guards had forgotten the combination to the lock and had to rely on a physical key that no one could find. By Friday, the rumor mill was in full swing. One of the junior engineers sent me a text message. Victoria had spent the last 2 days in closed-door meetings with HR and the legal department. They were trying to figure out if they could sue me for breach of contract or system sabotage. But their search of the system logs showed nothing but a clean logout. I had not deleted company files. I had not altered their configurations. I had simply stopped running my personal software and walked away at the end of my shift. They were realizing that the entire night shift operation, which protected billions of dollars in client assets, was held together by a single technician they had valued at less than the price of a used motorcycle. On Monday morning, a formal email arrived in my personal inbox. It was from Vanguard's senior legal counsel. The tone was aggressive, filled with terms like breach of duty, interference with business operations, and potential liability for client losses. They claimed that by removing my script and walking away during a cyberattack, I had intentionally damaged company property and exposed them to millions of dollars in damages. They threatened legal action if I did not immediately return the software and assist in restoring the servers. I did not panic. I simply forwarded the email to my lawyer friend, who had already drafted our response. 2 hours later, my lawyer sent a formal reply to Vanguard's legal department. The letter was short, precise, and cited federal copyright law. It stated that my client, Gerald Vance, is the sole author and copyright holder of the automated incident response script known as VanSguard, pursuant to 17 U.S.C. Section 106. The software was developed entirely on his personal time, using his personal hardware, and was never assigned to Vanguard Cyber Solutions through any intellectual property assignment agreement. The letter continued. My client's usage of his personal tool during his shifts was a voluntary convenience, not a contractually mandated duty. Any attempt by Vanguard to run, copy, or modify residual files of VanSguard on company servers without a written license agreement will be treated as willful copyright infringement, subject to statutory damages of up to $150,000 per infraction under 17 U.S.C. Section 54. Furthermore, my lawyer pointed out that since my client had declined to sign the retention agreement, his employment remained strictly at will. He had the legal right to resign at any moment, and his walkout at 3:15 a.m. was a lawful termination of his employment. The response from Vanguard's legal team was immediate silence. When you threaten a corporate legal department with federal copyright infringement and back it up with clear documentation, their appetite for a fight vanishes. They knew that if they went to court, they would have to explain to a judge and their clients why they were using unlicensed, employee-owned software to secure bank databases. The discovery process alone would have exposed their lack of internal controls and ruined what was left of their reputation. By Wednesday, the battle shifted from external threats to internal finger-pointing. Vanguard's board of directors ordered an emergency audit of the operations department. The board wanted to know how a single night shift technician walking out could bring their entire system to the brink of collapse. The audit team began pulling records, starting with the retention bonus allocations. They found that Victoria Caldwell had distributed the retention funds from a discretionary budget. There were no performance metrics, no technical evaluations, and no seniority considerations linked to the payouts. The audit revealed that Sean Brady, who had been with the company for less than 3 years and had 0 advanced security certifications, had been awarded $32,000. Meanwhile, I had spent 23 years maintaining the systems, held 4 advanced certifications, and was offered $4,500. The auditors also reviewed the incident logs from Monday night. They compared the timeline of the attack with the response times. The log files showed that I had documented the attack vectors, escalated the issue properly, and requested authorization to block the IP addresses. The delay in response was entirely due to Sean Brady's inability to identify the threat signatures and Victoria Caldwell's refusal to authorize emergency measures. The audit was a disaster for Victoria. It showed that her department was managed through favoritism rather than technical capability. She had built a system where the people who did the work were ignored, and the people who talked the loudest were rewarded. By Friday afternoon, Victoria's name was removed from the company directory. There was no announcement, no farewell lunch, and no email thanking her for her service. When you cost a company its biggest clients and expose them to federal lawsuits, you do not get a polite exit. You get escorted out of the building by security. Sean Brady did not escape the audit either. The board required him to undergo a technical competency assessment to justify his position as lead. Without me there to guide him or my script to automate his work, he struggled to answer basic questions about network routing and firewall configuration. His reputation was ruined. He had the $32,000 bonus, but he was now under constant supervision, and every ticket he touched was reviewed by a senior engineer. As for me, I spent that week working in my garden and helping Chloe pack for her move to Austin. I did not feel angry anymore. The corporate drama at Vanguard was like a television show I had stopped watching. I had spent 23 years believing that my hard work would eventually be recognized, but it had taken an insult to make me realize that I was the one who had to set my own price. If you do not value your own labor, no one else will do it for you. 3 weeks after I walked out of Vanguard Cyber Solutions, a recruiter I had spoken to a few years ago reached out to me. A larger security firm in North Austin was looking for a senior systems architect for their day shift operations. The role was focused on building automated incident response pipelines for enterprise clients. The interview was different from any I had experienced in my career. There were no trick questions, no demands to prove my basic skills, and no attempts to lowball my value. The hiring manager was a veteran engineer who had been in the field for 30 years. "We heard about what happened at Vanguard," he said during our first call. "In our line of work, we know who actually does the heavy lifting. We also saw that you did not delete files or sabotage their servers when you left. You just took your tools and walked. That shows a level of professionalism that is hard to find. We want someone who builds solid systems, Gerald. We are not looking for a firefighter to work in the dark. We want an architect." The offer letter arrived 2 days later. It included a base salary that was $18, zero higher than what I had been making at Vanguard, comprehensive health insurance, and a tuition assistance program that would cover 50% of Chloe's university fees. There was no retention agreement, no repayment clauses, and no restrictive covenants. They did not need a contract to keep me. They just paid me what I was worth. I accepted the offer immediately. A few days later, Vanguard's HR department sent me a standard exit questionnaire. They wanted to officially document my termination. I did not write a long emotional essay about Victoria Caldwell or Sean Brady. I simply wrote a 2-paragraph resignation letter. I stated that I was resigning due to a misalignment between my operational responsibilities and my compensation, and that I had terminated my employment in accordance with the at-will guidelines of my contract. I added that all files belonging to Vanguard had been left intact on their servers. The HR director signed off on my exit within an hour. They did not ask me to stay. They were just glad I was not suing them. A year has passed since that Monday night in Austin. I recently heard from a former colleague that Sean Brady completed his 12-month retention commitment. Because of the audit findings and his poor performance during the incident, he did not receive another bonus when his contract expired. Without my script to handle the night alerts, his day team was forced to absorb the overnight work, which led to high turnover and constant stress. Sean left the company 6 months later. The last time I saw his LinkedIn profile, he was working as a desktop support technician for a retail firm in Dallas. As for me, my life is quieter now. My new job does not require me to watch screens at 3 a.m. I work from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., and when I log off, the systems are someone else's responsibility. I have a team of junior engineers who are eager to learn, and I spend my days teaching them how to build automated pipelines rather than doing the manual labor myself. Chloe is starting her junior year at UT in the fall. She is doing well in her pre-med courses, and we no longer have to worry about how to cover her tuition bills. My salary increase and the tuition assistance program have taken care of everything, with enough left over for us to take a family trip to the coast last month. But the real victory is not the money or the new job title. It is the peace of mind. I sleep through the night now. When my phone buzzes at 2 a.m., I do not feel my chest tighten. I do not feel that rush of adrenaline, wondering which server is on fire or which client database is under attack. I just look at the screen, see a message from Chloe studying late in the library, asking if I am asleep, and text her back. I spent 23 years believing that if I just worked hard enough, accepted the bad shifts, and solved the problems that other people could not handle, the company would eventually see my value. I thought loyalty was a currency that could be traded for respect. It took a $27,500 retention bonus gap to teach me that corporations do not trade in loyalty. They trade in leverage. Your worth is not defined by how much stress you can endure or how many hours of sleep you are willing to lose. Sometimes, the most professional thing you can do is refuse to be undervalued. Once you walk away from the table, where respect is not being served, you realize that you never needed their validation in the first place.